Are you looking to sell a property with tenants living in it and wondering how to go about this in the best way to get the most money for your property? Well, then you should watch this video because today I'm going to tell you 3 tips and tricks that I would suggest doing to sell your property if it is tenanted. Hi, my name is Larissa and I'm a Toronto-based real estate agent specializing in helping first-time homebuyers get into the market and helping investors purchase properties that people actually want to live in. Today, if you enjoy this video, you could please hit subscribe or you could hit the like button and follow me for more insightful tips and tricks and videos just like this one. Now today, let's jump into the topic, which is selling a property with tenants. And I'm not going to go into the weeds of all of the ways you could try to get your tenants to move out or doing cash for keys deals. I think that there is a lot of information about this on the internet already, or if you do want to speak with me about this, you can definitely book a call. However, I want to talk to you today about whether or not you have to sell a property with tenants in the property, how you can do so in a way that's going to maximize your value. I see now more and more than ever before in Toronto, we are having a lot of properties being listed with tenants in them. I think a couple of reasons this is happening is because rents have gone up so drastically that a lot of tenants are willing to wait out and see whether or not the property actually sells before they move. And I also think that this is in relation to the fact that condos just aren't selling that quickly in general either. So a lot of tenants think, well, I have a shot at staying, why not take that shot? So needless to say, if you are going to sell your property with tenants in it, there are some things that you can do to ensure you get the most money and the most value for your property. So let's jump through those 3 things. The first one I'm going to say is collaboration. And I think this is really important. And a lot of landlords sort of struggle with this. With the tenants, if you are selling a property with tenants in place, they have to be on your team and you have to make sure that you treat them with respect, that you have open communication with them. But really, you have to see them as a valuable team player in selling your property. So as a landlord, making sure that you have them on board with the process, telling them as much in advance as you can about things that are coming up where you'll need access to the unit and the property, and really reinforcing that, their collaboration and cooperation is so instrumental in selling your home. So if you get the tenants on board, it's going to make the process a lot easier. I would even suggest doing things like getting them a gift card for the inconvenience of having to leave for showings, but really just sitting down and making sure you answer any questions they have. They're going to have people coming through the home that they live in. They never signed up to sell the property, right? So you want to make sure that you ease any concerns they have, answer any questions they have, make sure your realtor also has a great relationship with the tenants. I definitely, when I have tenanted properties, I go in and I am ready to be your best friend no matter what it takes, because I know how instrumental a tenant is going to be in the process of selling the property. So you want to make sure from the very get-go you see them as a partner in this process versus a you versus them or an us versus you. You just want to really make sure that your communication with them is clear, is concise, is friendly, and is happy and positive, and making sure that you keep them on your side. Okay, so that would definitely be my first tip. I think that goes, sometimes it's a little missed if landlords can be angry that the tenants won't leave or that a cash for keys deal wasn't able to be reached. I think that it's easy for a landlord to be upset because of that. So you just want to kind of keep those emotions aside. And if it means that you need to lean on your realtor to kind of be the equilibrium in that relationship, then I definitely think that is worth doing. The second tip that I'm going to give you for when you're selling a tenanted property is to do the work. I see a lot of the time properties end up on the MLS system. They are tenanted and it is obvious because they're not cleaned. There's no professional photos. They don't show very well. People, I'm sorry to say, don't want to buy these properties. And even my own buyers, a lot of them will forego seeing these properties because they don't want to deal with the headache. And when the photos don't show well, it makes them think, well, this tenant might not leave if I need vacant possession, or they might not be a good tenant if it's an investor looking to purchase. So you want to make sure you still do the work. I'm going to give you an example. So in the property that I just recently sold, it sold in 4 days and it sold for 99% of the asking price, which the average days on market right now in that area is about 27 days, and that's not for tenanted units. So in my opinion, we did a really great job at presenting the property. And what we did was we wanted to make sure it still had a fresh coat of paint, and we wanted to make sure it was presented in the best way possible. How do you do this with tenants living there? So this particular property is a studio, so it's quite a small space, and so it's really difficult to do any work in there with people living there. So what we did was we paid for the tenants to stay off-site. We put them in a guest suite in the building, but you can also definitely book an Airbnb or a hotel for them. That is something that we covered the cost. We, meaning the landlords and the sellers, we said, hey, look, we want to get this property painted. We want to make sure it's in great condition. The good news for you is if you get to stay and an investor purchases, you're going to have a freshly painted unit. So again, making sure you highlight the benefit for them. And if not, either way, you'll get for the next couple months a painted unit. So what we did was we rented the guest suites for them. We had a painter team come in for 2 days. And then at the same time, you can have a cleaner come in there, do a deep clean in the property. So really just trying to find solutions and ways we can get this done. Another thing that we did is even though the property has the tenants' furnishings, we couldn't really stage the property because we can't really remove their items. However, we did have a stager come in. We did ask if there were a few things that they could put away for us that were relatively easy to put away. They did so. And we also did have the property, what we call lightly staged, where the stager came in, actually reconfigured the entire layout of the property with what was existing in the furniture that was there, with the tenant's permission, of course. And the layout was 50 times better the way that they did it. It made so much more sense as they're an interior designer. And in doing this, the tenants actually liked it enough that they've kept it the way that it is even after the sale. So the tenants were thrilled. Their place looked beautiful when they came home. We had them leave for the day. The stager came in, the photographer came in, and we're kind of done with their space at this point. And I do think that it is worth saying that, in order to do all these things, you are going to need a cooperative tenant. I do understand that some tenants are just not cooperative. They don't want to help. They don't want a stager in the property. I got it, no problem. But that's where it goes back to number one with seeing these people as your team members is so important, because if you can get them on board, you can pitch to them, we're going to send you on a little staycation. You pick the Airbnb, you pick the hotel, we're sending you there. Then you're going to get people who are going to want to help you, right? So we had the stager come in, we had the painter come in, the property was clean, and doing this work meant that online it showed great. A lot of people didn't even know it was a tenanted unit unless they looked at the occupancy status of the property. So doing the work, I think, is still really important, as well. Getting the photos, getting the 3D tour, getting the floor plan done, getting all the marketing material done the exact same way you would do it as if you were having a sale of a property that wasn't tenanted. It's going to ensure that it stands out online. It attracts people to come to the property, especially with tenanted properties. There is a little bit more of a wait time to get in to see it, but having all of these resources online for buyers in the meantime is going to make a really big difference. So I would say collaborating with your tenants and doing the work are two things I would highly recommend doing. And the third and final tip I have, if you're selling a property that is tenanted, is you need the price to reflect the fact that it's tenanted. So you need to price aggressively. So if your property value is, let's say hypothetically, around $500 to $550, I would probably go a little bit lower than the $550 mark, just keeping in mind that there are tenants in place. Every market is different, but if you're selling a property in Toronto or in Ontario for that matter, if you are trying to attract an investor and your property is under rent control, meaning that, we can only increase by so much per year as set out by the government, and these tenants pay way under market value, you're going to want to put that sort of consideration into your price, because as an investor, it's not going to be very attractive if they can't up the rent on these tenants, right? And they're at like a market value price from 5 years ago. And then also for a buyer, speaking specifically to the Toronto market, they can evict a tenant. However, it gets really complex if the tenant does not leave, if they want it for end user purposes. If that tenant doesn't leave, it can push the closing date. There can be litigation issues. So from a buyer perspective, it's very risky to purchase a property that is, tenanted in this scenario. So you need that to be reflected in the price. You need to adjust your expectations that you might not get the same price if it was a vacant property. However, we can still put a price that, is still within market value. It's still competitive, but it has to be attractive, and you have to keep in mind sort of what you're up against in terms of the buyers that are coming to see your property. Make a price and pick a price that is attractive enough to get people through through the door, okay? And then a quick bonus tip I would recommend: if you have wonderful tenants in your space and you are trying to attract an investor, put together a little tenant package. So when I listed this property, I asked the tenants to send me all of their employment information, credit information, rental application, send me a little blurb about who you are. Who are you? You know, if this was a couple living there, tell me about how you met, right? Like write a little letter so that if an investor inquires to buy the property, then they get to know a bit about which tenants they are assuming, who these people are living in the unit. And from a tenant perspective, if they want to stay in this property, they're going to be incentivized to put this together because they know that they want to stay. So they're going to want to attract an investor and do everything they can to do that. And then, of course, if it works out that an end user buys it, their package, an application package for the next property they rent, is going to be ready to go so they can start looking right away. So I hope that these tips have been helpful. Again, these were really great for a property that I just sold in Toronto in 4 days at 99% of market value. And I do have to say that the tenants we had were exceptional and we got very lucky. But I do think that pretty much everyone is willing to work with you in some way. You just have to figure out how you can get them from angry that you're selling to a point of understanding why you're selling, answering their concerns, making them feel comfortable, and doing whatever you can to get the job done. Because ultimately, if you have to sell with a tenant, you still want to get the maximum price for your property. If you have any questions about selling a tenanted property or working with tenants or anything mentioned in this video, you can drop me a line. You can book a call using the Calendly link below, or you could also check out my website. I do have a landlord guide there for you as well, and a tenant guide if you're a tenant watching this and you also have questions. More than happy to help. Wishing you an amazing day, and thanks for tuning in to another helpful video. Bye for now.